In 2012, a mother and her 3 children, and her mother, who was the grandmother of the children, moved to a home in Gary, Indiana. The home was demon-possessed, and when they moved in, the family's ordeal began when swarms of flies started appearing in the porch and quickly escalated from mysterious thumps coming from the basement and muddy footprints appearing on the carpet to incidents of levitation. After midnight, Campbell and Ammons both said they occasionally heard the steady clump of footsteps climbing the basement stairs and the creak of the door opening between the basement and kitchen. No one was there. Even after they locked the door, the noise continued. Campbell said she woke one night and saw a shadowy figure of a man pacing her living room. She leaped out of bed to investigate and found large wet boot prints. All kinds of supernatural things were happening in that home. 2 of the most shocking physical manifestations happened and were witnessed by medics and law enforcement officials. One of which happened during a visit to the family doctor. On April 19, 2012, the family visited a hospital and were in the presence of nurses and doctors. They all stated they saw things they had never seen before whilst in that hospital room. Chaos erupted, and of the family members was possessed by it, it being a demon, and then that member of her family walked backwards towards the wall, then glided up that wall, walking backwards up the wall to above her head, and then flipped over her and stood there. And all the while demonic voices were being hurled at the people. This was witnessed by nurses, social workers and paramedics, all of whom recorded it in official reports. This happened in an emergency room and was witnessed by nurses, social workers and paramedics, all of whom recorded it in official reports. Some of whom even ran out of the room. The official records constitute over 800 pages of what happened that day. Pastor Lawson said a profound statement telling this event in one of his sermons about demonology. He stated, "After hearing this story, you've got to ask yourself, did that really happen? You have got to ask yourself the question, did that really happen? If it did happen. And it did happen. There is absolutely no logical scientific explanation to why it happened. I mean, walking up a wall backwards, I believe it, deal with it. I don't deny it, I don't have to deny it. I am a Bible believer. It doesn't surprise me one bit today that Satan can make a physical manifestation today that defies what the human body is capable of. It defies all explanation. To walk backwards up wall and flip over in front of someone is against all the laws of physics, against all the laws of nature. Albert Einstein would have a problem with this. He was a professor of physics. But if Einstein had witnessed someone walk backward up a wall, he would have to go back into his study and he would have to go open up some books and he would have to do some reading because everything he had learned up until that point would be challenged by what he saw. And the remarkable thing about it is when you get into this stuff and you begin to see this power come against you, and it blows your mind and gives you goosebumps all over your body and the hair on the back of your neck begins to stand up. You don't turn to doctors. You don't turn to science. You turn to Jesus because that is the only thing that will make them leave.
The topic of demonology is ignored in today's church. When was the last time at your church you heard a prolonged teaching about demons? Ignoring them doesn't make them go away. There is a very real demonic army, and you come across them more often than you are aware of. This reminds me of a testimony I heard from a pastor. He was telling us about a doctor who shared his testimony. The doctor worked in the emergency department, so each day was a high-pressure day. People would be rushed in there with minor emergencies or life-threatening ones. But what the doctor noticed is that some of the minor emergencies were actually life-threatening that hadn't been diagnosed yet. Or a person would come into the hospital with a clear and obvious injury on their arm. All the while the person would have another hidden, more serious one. For instance, internal bleeding or something of that sort. So what this doctor began to do as practice is that every time someone was rushed into the emergency department, he would pray silently for them in his mind. He would ask God to help him identify quickly if the patient had any other hidden injuries. He would then pray and ask God to help him through all the processes he needed to do, and then finally he would pray for the patient to make a full recovery and that their health will be restored. So one day in the hospital, a young lady was brought in by paramedics and was unconscious, and as the doctor was making this silent prayer in his mind, the lady suddenly woke up and turned her head to the doctor and looked at him directly in the eyes and said in the most demonic voice, "Stop praying for me." And then she went back out of consciousness. Demons cannot read your mind, but the power of prayer must have been causing a very unsettling atmosphere for the evil spirit. I tell you this story only to highlight the reality of demons and how even in our everyday walk we may encounter them. The same way angels are real is the same way demons are real. There are some truths that ignorance cannot falsify. Whether someone believes in the reality of demons or not, it does not falsify the truth that they exist. Demons are spirit beings, but they could find their dwellings in humans and manipulate them to do evil. Some of us do not understand the reason some people act and behave irrationally. It may not be far from the fact that they have some demons maneuvering them. Many people try to avoid the concept of demonology in our day. Some would even argue that there are no such things as demons. But demons are real and their operations are real too. Jesus never tried to avoid demons. He talked about the reality and the operations of demons, and he also dealt with several demons in the Gospels. Jesus wouldn't have wasted his time talking about what is not in existence.
There is a testimony of the missionary Alfred Howard Carter and his missionary partner Lester Sumrall. They were traveling across the world in their missionary work, and on one occasion they were on a particular island, and they were preaching and ministering on the island, one end of it to the other end. And on one occasion they stayed in a home of a particular family. They described it as a wonderful home, a very large home. The family was an extremely wealthy family, and their home was near enough the size of a mansion. The family opened up the house to them, and they received an invitation to stay in their home. The man of that house had 7 unclean spirits who lived in him. Rather than the man being the man of the house, it appeared that these unclean spirits were the ones in charge of that house. They called the shots in that home, which I found strange as to why they were allowed these ministers of the gospel to stay there. One example they gave was that these spirits would not allow the wife to sleep in the same bed with her husband. And when she attempted to do so, the spirits would pull her out of the bed, and she found black spots all over her body. These spirits would not allow her to stay in the same room as her husband, even though the husband himself wanted her to stay in the room with him at night. And on one occasion, when these 2 missionaries were staying there after the man went to work, the wife showed them the altar where these 7 spirits manifested from. It was a very strange altar with objects hanging from it. So that night, when the gentlemen stayed in that house, they shared a room, and in the middle of the night there, they were woken up by spirits. Something stood at the foot of their bed, what they described as an entity. A dark figure stood at the foot of their bed, and the spirit said aggressively, "Howard, what are you doing in this house?" Both men were woken up startled and shaking, and both started praying and commanded that spirit to leave the room, and it left the room. Unclean spirits are real. just as much as they were real in the Bible days.
We know the story of the man with a legion of devils. Listen to the confrontation between Jesus and the legion of devils. Please note a legion is between 3,000 and 6,000 devils. Mark 5, 6-9. But when he saw Jesus afar off, he ran and worshipped him, and cried with a loud voice, and said, What have I to do with thee, Jesus, thou Son of the Most High God? I adjure thee by God, that thou torment me not. For he said unto him, Come out of the man, thou unclean spirit. And he asked him, What is thy name? Here is what I want you to pay attention to. And when he answered, saying, My name is Legion, for we are many. Did you notice how he went from singular to plural? My name is Legion, for we are many. They are united. A young man shared his family's testimony about demonic possession. While staying at his cousin's house, his cousin's new stepfather was involved in occult practices. So on one occasion when he went there, the stepfather took him and his cousin to attend one of his rituals, and from that moment he changed. The cousin's stepfather gave him a necklace and told him never to throw it away and for him to always wear it. Fast forward to the young man being an adult. He gave his life to the Lord and he decided to throw the necklace away because he knew it was given to him after performing an occult ritual. The moment he threw it away, all hell broke loose in his life. Demons began to manifest in his home, appearing and disappearing in his mirrors. Objects would be moving around in his house. On more than one occasion, he would enter rooms in the house and there would be swarms of flies in the rooms, but none of the windows would be open. Hollywood could not make stuff up this man experienced. There was a clear satanic attack in his life, and it all started as soon as he took off this necklace. And it wasn't just one evil spirit, it was more than one. These demon forces would come attacking him in waves. It was as if one evil spirit would manifest itself, and then another one would, and then one after the other. All of them would threaten him to get the necklace back and collect it. He stated, there were at least 5 evil spirits attacking him. Prior to him throwing his necklace away, he had lived for over 10 years a perfectly normal life. He didn't even know there was such a thing called the supernatural. It all started when he threw this necklace away. Thank God, he went to a true Bible-believing church, and he was equipped with knowledge he needed to fight these attacks. And over time, the Lord delivered him from the attacks. He never found out the significance of that necklace. He was just happy he was delivered from the forces of darkness that kept trying to attack him.